All right, welcome to the Chapter 14 video lecture. So Chapter 14 deals with photographic, recorded, and computer-generated evidence. These have all become more common as technology has advanced, as we are capable of producing more. Some forms of evidence are admitted as the same basis as a photograph would be. So photocopies, motion picture films, X-rays, audio-video recordings, and computer-generated images projected onto a screen or printed on paper. Given the federal rules of evidence definition, writings and recordings are set down or recorded in any manner. So in a photograph means a photographic image or its equivalent stored in any form. So that's the basis for why these are all treated as photographs. In order to introduce that photograph or recording, you're going to first show relevance. You're going to lay the foundation, and because it's a photograph, you have to establish the best evidence rules. If you think back a couple of weeks, that best evidence rule, original or an acceptable reproduction. There are two different types of photographs or images that can be used. There are substantive versus demonstrative. If a visual aid is used by the jury to decide a fact, such as the number and a location of wounds on a victim, then a visual aid here would be substantive evidence. On the other hand, if a visual aid is just used to illustrate the testimony given by a witness, then the visual aid is demonstrative evidence only. Generally, as long as the image will assist a jury in understanding the testimony of a witness or further explain an idea, the judge will have the discretion to let the jury see the aid. When a photograph is used as pictorial testimony, in other words, that it is used to illustrate the testimony, a sponsoring witness needs to testify that it is fair and accurate representation of the subject matter. So if we think about an image of a victim's wounds, so if someone takes a stand to testify about the doctor takes a stand to testify that they treated the wounds, and this is just used to illustrate their testimony, that doctor is first going to need to testify that this is a fair and accurate representation of the treatment that they gave and location of all the wounds. Photographs, films, or videos taken by an automatic camera with no operator present can be introduced to document events recorded under the silent witness theory. Okay, silent witness theory. Courts are pretty uniform that admissibility of video evidence is a matter of discretion for the trial court judge. So on appeal, this is not going to be a successful argument to retroactively get things into evidence. Now, photocopies, X-rays, and computer-generated output. These are again, for the federal rules of evidence, they're going to be treated like a photograph. They're more high-tech. They might require something else to authenticate them beyond just a photograph, such as someone who's trained in X-rays. But as far as the rules of evidence are concerned, they are treated as photographs. And again, computer-generated images have become more common in courts. But the evidence still needs to be relevant, not hearsay, and supported by that proper foundation. Photographic evidence can be used to show the scene of a crime, demonstrate a theory as to how the events may have occurred, recording the behavior of a party or witness, to document the surveillance of an individual, to record police lineups, identification procedures, or the identification itself, record activities of those being investigated for driving under the influence, including the administration of the field sobriety tests, record interviews of the suspect, victim, or witness, record depositions, preserve testimony, record a criminal confession, to record or generate crime reenactments, and accident recreation. So as you can see, there are numerous ways that these types of evidence come into criminal courts. This again just kind of just is reaffirming that computer-generated graphics and reproductions have become very commonplace in the court. So the first rule of admissibility is that it be relevant. So photographic or recorded evidence needs to have a connection to the facts of the case. Is it relevant? So that is, and as we think about this semester, it's been very repetitive. Is it relevant? Is it relevant? So again, we're still concerned about that here. Again, relevance is any tendency to make any fact of consequence more or less probable. The judge then gets to implement the balancing test to make sure that the evidence enlightens the jury without becoming prejudicial to that criminal defendant. For photos, videos, computer animations, the existence can be used to show the existence of the object or scenario rather than just as background information. For criminal courts, again, an issue is going to be about the gruesome photographs. And some photographs can prejudice the defendant and outweigh their value. If a photograph is so repugnant and its potential for inflaming the jury substantially outweighs its probative value, the judge will exclude it. So some types of photographs, nude photographs, are just as admissible as any other photograph. But if it is not pertinent, it should generally be excluded, and it's usually best that private area of the body be covered unless there's a need for the jury to see it. After relevance is established, often the evidence has to be authenticated. This is usually someone who understands what happened and can talk about it, or the person who took the photograph, who took the video, the person who's been storing it. Accuracy is going to be required. A crime scene should be photographed or videoed as soon as possible after the discovery to avoid any alterations. And unless there are injured persons or animals that require removal, no changes should be made at the crime scene until it is properly recorded or videoed. We do not necessarily presume that a photograph or recording is accurate or true. There does have to be a witness who can testify that the crime scene was depicted like this, or that the sounds are accurate. But again, all that is required is that a witness be willing to testify that this is what they observed, or what the image that they took. When a document, photograph, recording, or video speaks for itself, this means that the witness attesting to the accuracy can only testify that this is an accurate depiction of the photograph. They should not describe the video, photograph, or content of it. And this makes sense. That is the job of the jury to do that. So a witness should not be doing it when the evidence can do it for itself. The photographer is not necessary to verify the accuracy. The witness who testified to attest to the accuracy can be anyone familiar with the scene, or anyone who can authenticate or verify the accuracy. So it does not have to be that the only person to get a photograph in does not have to be the person who took the photograph, and that makes sense. Crime scenes are a work together; they're a collaborative effort, and it may be a better fit to have a different person to authenticate, verify the accuracy. Officers do need to record the equipment and procedures used, why each thing was chosen, and the conditions at the time the photograph or video was taken. There are no legal restrictions on types of camera. The only requirement is that it be an accurate representation. One exception is that computer generated output in some videos sometimes require testimony to demonstrate that this is reliable or accurate. If that is the case, if there is this further testimony needed about this newer technology, this newer computer generated output, then an expert witness will be required to make that to be that type of witness that would need an expert. There's no requirement that the photographer or videographer have any particular amount of experience to get the evidence in. If the evidence is an X-ray or computer generated, the operator is usually going to need to be someone with special knowledge of the equipment being used. So you are going to need an X-ray technician or radiographer to testify about an X-ray. Aside from the witness who comes in and testifies about the accuracy, another method of authenticating a photograph or recording is chain of custody. So again, this concept from week 1 and last week are coming back in. And another, same as last time, distinctive characteristic of the photograph can also be used. The most practical means of doing this is for the officer to place a distinctive characteristic within the crime scene before shooting it. And the object placed there should be used just for identification purposes, and it should not be something that can be confused with the crime scene itself. Placing an object in the crime scene for identification, the considerations are what should be used, where should it be placed, what identification data should be included, and should measurement devices be placed at the crime scene. So think like rulers, measuring tapes, things like that. The most practical object is identification card or stiff paper. When it's taken really close, like a footprint, like when you're trying to get a clear, accurate photograph of a footprint, a small 3x5 inch card with notations can be helpful. A business card giving the officer's name and department is also acceptable. The object should be strategically placed. The preferred practice is to place the identification object in the lower right or left hand corner. That way most of the photograph is the actual crime scene. If an identification card is used, the information there should be minimal. No statements should be put on there. Numbering on the photographs can also cause a problem down the road. If you think about it, maybe it raises questions to a juror. It's like, well, this is photograph number 3, where's photograph number 1 and 2? And there's no reason that 1 and 2 have to be introduced. Remember, if we think back, prosecutor gets to decide what and how. Placement, if there's a measurement device, it should be positioned so there is a gap between the measurement device and the object itself. There should be no advertising other than the identification information. Sometimes when photographs are taken of reconstructions, there are imposed or artificially reconstructed crime scene photographs. When this is done, they should conform the reconstruction to the descriptions of the original crime scene or collision and the witnesses' descriptions. But when they are able to successfully do so, these images are admissible. When you're presenting a photographic evidence, the most common size used is an 8x10 enlargement. this is done to present sufficient detail. It fits into court files easily, and the jurors can handle and pass it around during deliberations. Overhead projections using transparencies, videos, computer-assisted images are acceptable to use. They should be broadcast or projected onto a screen large enough for everyone in the courtroom to see it. An alternative to projecting it on a wall might be to have a monitor brought before a judge, before the judge, the witness, the jury, and the lawyers. Now, sometimes, especially in crime TV, you see diagrams, charts, and boards. So if that is going to be used to explain certain facts, the board should be big enough that it can be readily seen by people in the jury box. So if you want to compare fingerprints and you have multiple fingerprints, if they're the size of a real fingerprint, that's problematic. The jury would not be able to see it, so it needs to be enlarged so that they could see from the jury box and see the detail, accurate. It has to also be an accurate representation. Again, courts are slowly becoming more high-tech. A question that's really important as you're laying out your case is how many photographs should you take and how many should you present. There should be enough photographs taken that accurately display or capture the crime scene. It should be it should be accurate. At least, in a homicide case, there should be a picture of the general area where the homicide took place. In a traffic accident case, at least one picture should be taken in the direction from which each vehicle was moving, just so that these images are actually accurate depictions. Moving on, when these are going to be used, they should all be reviewed. All evidence needs to be properly printed, it needs to be edited, and it needs to be accurate. And again, this just, I don't know why they have this at the end of this particular slide. I should move it. But again, x-rays do require someone to verify the accuracy. And the person should be able to discuss the equipment as well as the actual image. All right, so this is wrapping up the video lecture here. If you have any questions,